What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cross Country Bank Angler. Today I've got another fishing reel review video for you today. I'm going to be talking about another bait caster that I have been putting in some time with over the last year or so, roughly. In this day and age, things have changed a lot in the last year or so in terms of the cost of fishing gear, especially rods and reels. Prices have started to go up. I don't know if you're, I'm based in the U.S., and if you're, shopping online, one of the big retailers is Tackle Warehouse, right? Everyone kind of knows Tackle Warehouse. But yeah, I was kind of just going on there, just kind of browsing the other day, just for the heck of it. Wasn't really planning on buying anything, but I was stunned at some of the price changes, the price increases. Nothing's gone down. Price increases across almost all of the major fishing gear manufacturers. The fishing reel companies out there. They pretty much have all increased their prices. I think of kind of the big four right off the bat, right? Abu Garcia, Luz, Daiwa, Shimano. Those are kind of the four main ones that kind of come to mind that a lot of people rely on and fish with. And I do think, as a general rule, those are all good options to go. But yeah, every single one had put a pretty significant increase in their prices on every reel in their lineup, from what I could tell, except for maybe some of the old ones that they're trying to just kind of clear out of their inventory. So it's getting harder and harder for fishermen to find good deals out there on gear without kind of just going for like secondhand stuff, which sometimes it works out, but sometimes it doesn't. But this reel here, this is the Piscifun Alloy M, guys. So yeah, I picked this reel up about, I guess it was a couple years ago. Didn't really touch it for a while, just kind of had it in the box. About a year ago I started fishing with it, and I think in terms of value, this could still be one of the best kind of bang for your buck fishing reels on the market. So without further ado, there are some videos. This is not a reel that's new to the market. It's been out for a while. There's several videos out there on it, so I'm kind of retreading some old ground with this reel, but I've been pleased enough with it that I wanted to go ahead and make sure that my opinion on it was out there. And maybe if you're looking for a good deal on a good performing, durable bait casting reel, then this could be one you might consider picking up. So without further ado, let's get into the details of the Piscifun Alloy M and do a little review on it. All right, people, so here is the Piscifun Alloy M. You can see I still got some line on it here. So when I got this reel, I got it for kind of like as a heavier duty reel for targeting larger fish, bass, or who knows, bowfin, catfish, trying to handle some bigger fish, some bigger lures. So yeah, 50-pound braid to a 15-pound leader, plenty of capacity with that line on this reel. I would say that this reel, in terms of the spool size, is like a 100 or a 150 size, so kind of like a fairly typical size for a bait caster used in freshwater fishing. But the reason I got this reel for heavy duty is because this reel has an aluminum frame. The center piece here is metal, and then the two side plates here are graphite. But that metal frame, if you watched a lot of reel reviews out there, guys will tell you, a metal frame reel is gonna be kind of longer lasting, more tougher, more durable, more able to kind of withstand the pressures of kind of higher intensity, higher powered techniques, setting hooks on you know, something like a topwater frog, you know, way out in the middle of some gunk or you know, lily pads or whatever, or pitching and flipping, you know, big soft plastics and thick weed mats for bass, for example. You know, those techniques that can really put a strain on your reel. So that was kind of my goal here, was finding something that had that durability of an aluminum frame for a good price. And I was able to do that at the time. You know, it was a couple years ago when I bought it, and I was able to get this reel for, I think, around $60 off of AliExpress. Now, I do want to talk, you know, things have changed a lot, you know, the economic situation, like I mentioned before, with the tariffs. And so we'll get more into, you know, that issue at the end. But that's you know, being able to get a metal frame for that price off the shelf in the US is basically impossible, guys. You're not going to find a metal frame reel for that price. And you know, back in the, you know, as of a year or two ago, you generally have to pay at least $100 to get a aluminum framed reel. With the most recent changes in price that these, you know, big manufacturers have implemented over the last several months here, that's really looking more like, you know, you're going to probably have to drop, you know, $130, $120 at least to get that feature now off the shelf, brand new from a mainstream manufacturer. Now, Piscifun is, I think, a decently known brand, but it's not one of those big names that's out there. But you know, I think if you want value, or if you're just on a budget, it's not a bad option to go and see what Piscifun has to offer. They just have a handful of models out there. So this is a 7:5:1 gear ratio reel. That's the same gear ratio that you're gonna find on a lot of like Lew's reels. So I have a feeling this reel is probably made in the same factory as a Lew's. I think it's called Doyo. I think it's a Korean brand that actually manufactures the majority of the reels for like Lew's and Abu Garcia, and some of the lower end models for other manufacturers as well. So in terms of the build quality, you can expect it to be on that level of a, you know, one of the less expensive Lew's or Abu Garcia models. And this 7:5:1 speed gives you 29.5 inches per turn, which is, I think that's pretty standard for a 7-speed, around 28 to 30 inches per turn. And as I'm winding here, you know, I gotta say this reel is nice and smooth, guys, on the retrieve. I don't know if I would say it's the absolute smoothest I've ever, you know, turned, but it's definitely comfortable, and you know, there's not a lot of resistance here at all. You're not feeling any grinding or knocking or anything like that. It's pretty quiet as well when you're just winding it in. So this reel is very comfortable to cast and retrieve. Now, one thing I do want to point out here, and this is something that I don't love about the reel, is the handle and knob assembly here. So I actually fished this reel with a different handle and knob. I got an aftermarket one for like 10 or 15 bucks to put on here, because I'm not a huge fan of the handle and knobs that come with it. That's what's on here right now. So this is a long handle, like I would say 100 millimeter at least, maybe a little bit more. And I feel like typical for most bait casters of this size is like a 90 or a 95 millimeter. So it's a long handle, but it's also, these knobs are not great either, because they're just kind of small knobs. These are, I feel like this is an area where they kind of took some cost-cutting measures with the reel. You know, if you're gonna have this long handle, I would think that would mean bigger knobs, chunkier knobs, but they didn't do that here. These are pretty small. I mean, the shape isn't that bad, but they're like scaled down You know, these are EVA knobs too, which I'm not a huge fan of the EVA, but they're just small knobs for the size of the handle. And you know, my hands are on the smaller side, to be completely honest. But even for my relatively small hands, these knobs feel too small. You know, I just don't feel like I have a great grip here. You know, I just want a little more to hold on to for those higher intensity techniques. You know, you got your drag lock down, you're pulling a fish out of a weed mat or something. So I did change this out, and this is actually the one that I use a lot with it. And I got this on eBay, so it's not something, I think you could still find something like it today. But I went with this one. Like I said, I think it was like 15 bucks. You can see, looks a lot nicer. It's carbon fiber. I think this is a 90 millimeter or 95. So it's a shorter, and these knobs are just way better. These cork knobs. I mean, I think the cork is more comfortable than EVA. Looks better. It's also got these nice these red end caps, which looks really nice with the reel. You can kind of get the impression of it there, the way I'm holding it. And yeah, that red actually kind of sets off, you know, we got the little logo on the side here. So that's kind of a personal preference thing. You know, maybe these knobs are fine for you. You're willing to kind of accept the smaller knobs. That's just kind of a personal preference, but something I wanted to point out. All right, so what else here? So I think this reel, this is actually has a metal drag star, which is nice. Got a nice click to it. This reel has 22 pounds of drag pressure, which is quite high. Another thing that makes this a good kind of heavy duty reel, guys. That 22 pounds of pressure. You know, a lot of reels have about half that amount, and honestly, for most of the fishing I do, 10 to 12 pounds is probably plenty, but that extra pressure is nice if you are going to be really using this for some bigger fish or in some of those higher intensity situations where you need a lot of power. So you can see there's a lot of badging on this reel. You can see the name here on this top plate. I showed you the gear ratio earlier. You can see our bearing count there. This is a 9 bearing reel count, 9 bearing count on the reel, which is pretty good, I think, for the price. Good number of bearings, and overall, you know, the fit and finish is pretty good. You can see some areas where, you know, it's gotten a little scratched. You know, there's some bit of the finish on the graphite here that's scraped off slightly. So, you know, as you use this thing, you know, it might get a little dinged up, but that's not the biggest priority when you're trying to buy a reel for the price that I bought this one for. Let's see, other badging here. There's the Piscifun name, and then min and max there for the brake dial here. Thumb bar feels pretty nice and positive on this thing. You notice there is a little bit of mush here, just a tiny bit of give on the thumb bar, but once it goes down, it snaps really nicely. One thing I've heard some people complain about, and I kind of agree with, is that the thumb bar is not the easiest to push down. It's a little more resistance than a lot of others. Another thing that is kind of nice about it, though, you can kind of get the profile of the reel. Look at the position of the thumb bar relative to the line guide, and you can kind of see the thumb bar is in a relatively high position here, which is a sort of almost a Shimano-like feature. But I do kind of like that a little bit more than just kind of a lower position. It just feels like it's easier to kind of just easily push it down when you're with your thumb as you're putting your thumb down on your spool line there. Just a small thing that I think is a little bit nicer. Let's see other stuff here. Line guide, pretty standard looking line guide. This looks like a loose line guide, honestly. I kind of need to clean it here. You can see I have been putting this thing to work here in some slop, in some grime, doing some bass fishing. But yeah, standard line guide there, no kind of funnel shape or cone shape. It's kind of a pretty common thing for reels to do now, because it's, you know, it may or may not improve your smoothness of your casts. Spool tension knob does click, nice and secure feeling. But yeah, so yeah, I prefer having a click here. The weight of this reel. So it is a metal frame reel, and it's pretty hefty. It's not a particularly lightweight reel. The weight on this is 7.4 ounces. That's kind of what I would consider as average. So you're not getting a super lightweight package with this thing. But that's not really what this reel is for. It's not for light duty. It's a heavy duty reel, so it's gonna feel heavy duty, and it does. It's a nice chunk of a reel. And you know, the overall feel in hand, you know, this reel is quite a low profile. You know, it's not gonna stick up a whole lot off of the rod, which is nice. I will say, compared to some of my other reels, this reel feels a lot wider. Well, not a lot wider, but a little bit wider. And like I said, my hand's on the smaller side, so I do feel that chunkiness, that width in this reel when I'm fishing. So that's something to get used to if you like smaller, lighter, finessier reels. But like I said, for the purpose that I got this for, I'm totally fine with it feeling a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust. So, but something to note there, if you're looking for a really small reel, this is probably not going to be for you. And you can see the brake dial here. I like the setup of this brake dial. You can see it's very clearly labeled there with some numbers, which I think for a beginner, having some numbers, some reference points out here is nice versus just kind of having a plain dial here. And it's got some nice positive clicks. I think I counted 26 clicks on this dial, so that's a lot of levels of adjustment. I find the brakes to be quite strong on this. I really don't have to use much at all for the techniques that I've been employing on this. I keep it around 3, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Just depends on the weight of what I'm casting and the conditions. You know, if it's a little bit windier, I'll probably use a little bit more, or if I've got a, you know, throwing like a weightless plastic, maybe I'll use a little more. If I've got something heavy, I'll dial it back. So you can, there's plenty of adjustability here with this reel. You're getting a magnetic system, a magnetic brake system, a static magnetic brake system. So let's go ahead and open this reel up and take a look at that brake system. The way to access is just this little catch here, and it's a twist. You want to twist there to get that side plate off. And there's the brakes. And you can see here, this is a pretty conventional, I believe it's called a MagTrax style system. Brakes, a static system, so you're going to be getting a consistent level of brake resistance through the cast with this type of system. And let's check the movement here. So I'm going to move it back. That's the minimum setting. And that's the maximum setting. Quite a bit of travel there. Quite a bit of movement. Just gonna go ahead and get that back to where I had it. So yeah, these brakes work really well, guys, in my opinion. This is probably one of the best of these static MagTrax brake systems that I've used. I really don't get many backlashes with the 50-pound braid that I use, and usually if I do, it's because of a mistake that I made, or the line catching on something, you know, stuff that doesn't have to do with the brakes themselves. All right, so we got that side plate back on. Not too tough to get it back on. You just kind of twist it back from below, sort of the way you twisted it off. Fairly simple. So I'm trying to think if there's much else to say, guys, about it. My impression so far is that this is a nice, durable reel, and it handles, you know, heavy duty techniques really well. But I think, you know, if you wanted to throw something lighter on this, you know, if you wanted to you know, put like some 12-pound, you know, fluorocarbon on here and go throw a little crankbait around, or, you know, a little jerk bait or something. So it can do those lighter techniques, guys. So you'll probably all right, guys, so I'm about to wrap things up here with this video. You can see I put the aftermarket handle and knobs on it again. SLP Works is the brand. And you can see it does look a little bit nicer with the cork and the red accents there. You know, this is a nice looking reel out of the box too, but I think this really makes it look a little more high end, and it's definitely more comfortable fishing with those cork knobs. But yeah, guys, this is a solid option out there, and it's tough. You know, it's a tough reel with a metal frame. You can do some heavy duty fishing with it. And I got it for 65 bucks. But that, like I said, that was a couple years ago. And that's really what I want to talk about right now, is if you wanted to go out and buy this reel today, where can you do it? And the answer is, I'm not really sure. But even if you can find this thing for $90, that's still a very good value, guys, for what you're getting. You know, you're getting a metal framed reel, powerful drag system, very smooth operation. You know, this reel I had, you know, I fished with it for a while, and I did get kind of a knock in the retrieve at one point. And all I had to do to get rid of that was put some oil on this worm gear, I think it's called. Basically, it's the gear that your line guide's kind of traveling along there. There was something in there, and yeah, put some oil in there, boom, it was gone. So yeah, guys, this is a great value if you can find it. I would say keep your eyes peeled, because if you are able to pick this thing up, it's definitely worth the money. Even at $90, with the way prices are these days, still a great deal. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching. If you liked this type of content, please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.